So Kristin, this is the first time we've met. Tell us about yourself. You're Kristin Burton. That's all I know so far.
Sure. So I graduated in 2016 from Butler. I went to PA school there, became a initially hospitalist PA, and then did cardiology for several years before most recently moving to pulmonary critical care. So I now do work nights in pulmonary critical care, which turns out to be mostly critical care, and not that much pulmonology goes on in the middle of the night. Um, and so yes, that's my full-time gig. And then I started a side business in 2019 to help people sort of get their finances on track. I came from, graduating in 2016 with $161,000 in student loan debt and a
Wow.
mortgage. So
Wow.
I kind of went through that struggle and was able to navigate that and figure that out with the help of a bunch of different resources. So I've tried to kind of pool that and be a resource for other people going through the same thing.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I want to definitely talk about that because obviously all of us have debt as we come out of school, student loan debt, mortgage debt, stuff like that. But what drew you to the PA profession? I mean, of all the professions that were out there, what was it? Was it a family influence? Was it just your interest in medicine, or what was it that drove you here?
Sure. So initially, I actually was pre-med, and after kind of conversations with my undergraduate advisor, I changed to PA. At the time, part of it was that I was told, the work-life balance is better, which, in retrospect, probably isn't always true anymore. I think it really wildly depends on your subspecialty and what job you have in particular. But part of it was that, and
Mhm.
part of it was the ability to sort of move subspecialties laterally.
Yeah.
I really liked the idea of being able to do different things throughout my career and not being kind of pigeonholed into one field. So those were initially my two drivers.
Gotcha. Yeah, that is a huge thing. I've talked about this before, but my father and my brother are both physicians,
Okay.
and it's great, but they're stuck. If
Right.
if you get to the end of all of your residencies and fellowships and realize I don't really like this, it's hard to move.
Right.
Whereas I can, just like you, I can go down to the ER and I can apply for a job and work in the ER. So,
Right.
how's working nights? Do you enjoy it? Do you not enjoy it? Is it a
I love it
necessary evil?
actually.
Oh, really?
Well, I never thought I would. I initially had worked some nights moonlighting, trying to pay off my loans, and I said, I'll never work a night shift again. And then at the same hospital that I was doing cardiology, the critical care group was hiring, and their nocturnal people have a schedule of 7 12-hour shifts and then 14 days off.
Oh,
Yeah, so I was really
wow.
interested in that. Plus, I've spent my whole career in the hospital, and it's not that I don't mind rounding. I, or it's okay, but I really like the new stuff. I really like kind of the initial stabilization, diagnostic period. So for me, nights is, all new stuff and putting out fires and not rounding, which turns out to be what I enjoy doing the most.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. We get in the habit where I work of, it's kind of a function of getting notes on the chart, and that's not
Mhm.
medicine. We're not. We're just
Right.
kind of, what did they say yesterday? What are we doing today? Okay, move on. And you're
Mhm.
not. You kind of lose some of that diagnostic stuff. So,
Right.
but at the same time, once I get like 5 or 6 consults in a row, I'm like, can I just get something easy? Like this is all hard. So you get all consults all night. So
Right.
holy cow. Well, good. Awesome. So tell me about this debt. Like, obviously, we all have debt, but you had,
Right.
I mean, I guess I don't want to add up how much I've had, but you had a lot. You have a
Yeah,
big number, and you got out of all of it, right?
I did.
In a short amount of time, from what I know.
Yes, yes. So I had 161,000, and the way that was all from PA school, by the way. I
Oh,
was fortunate enough that my parents helped with undergrad, so that was all PA school. And the way my PA program was set up, the initial part of my program technically looked like I guess, yeah, second bachelor's, really. When in reality, it was a graduate program for me because I already had a prior bachelor's, but it messed up the way that my loans worked. So
mm,
I was not eligible for a lot of federal student loans at the time. So the majority of my loans were all private student loans. from Wells Fargo with interest rates of like 9, 10, 11%.
Oh no. Oh
Yeah.
my
So
goodness.
it not
Oh
only
my
was it
goodness.
a really big dollar amount, but it were really high interest loans. And, when I finished, it's like, wow, these are going to crush me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your, I
So,
mean, curious, at that interest rate, what was your monthly payment on a loan that size?
I honestly, I can't remember the exact amount because I never once made just the minimum payment, but I want
Oh,
to say it was going to be around $2,000 a month.
oh my word. Right out of school.
Right.
Like, so, oh,
Right out of school.
I'm making money.
Yeah.
This is great. And now
Yeah.
$2,000 of it goes to loans. Oh,
Right. Right. So
brutal.
you graduate and you're like, I'm going to be able to do all these things. We're going to travel and do all this stuff at our house. And then, you see the loans, which I was one of those people that I really never even added it up while I was in the program. You're
Right.
getting slammed. Your life is so stressful. So, somewhere around graduation, I thought I should add up my student loan debt.
That's a rough couple minutes with the calculator when you're like, hold
Yeah.
on, I must have done something wrong. It can't be
Yeah.
this big.
Yeah. You're like, I think I might throw up. So
Yeah.
I did that. I added it up and I'm like, okay, this is going to be a problem. And then I
Wow.
actually calculated out on just like an online calculator how much interest I was going to pay over the entire life of the loan, which
Oh
was
no.
mortifying. Like,
Oh no. Yeah.
at those interest rates in a 15-year term, like we're talking tens of thousands of dollars. I think it was almost six figures. Like, I just remember sitting at the kitchen table and being like, I did what?
Right.
I'm so excited that I graduated. I got this job. And then I'm like, was this even really worth it? Like, this is going to financially crush us, which was a hard season to realize, like, just how big the consequences were going to be of the loans that I'd signed up for.
Right. Right. And at that point, what do you do? I mean, they're
Right.
yours.
It's
So
done. Yeah.
yeah, I know. I remember doing the math and figuring out, I should have stayed a phlebotomist. Like it was something like I was like, if I just would have just done that, like I wouldn't have all
Yeah.
these loans and would actually have about the same. Like, why did I do all this? So now obviously the responsibilities and things are different. So
Right.
it has worked out. But
Right.
okay, so you add up the number. It is mortifying, like you said.
Yeah.
What did you do? Like what made you think of I need to figure out a way to not just make the minimum payment and be tied to
Right.
this like an
Right.
anchor. I want to get on top of it. What was that?
Honestly, that's just kind of my nature. Like, I'm like, this is a really big problem. I signed up for it, honestly, naively, because I didn't think enough about the decision, but really before I made the financial decision. I'm like, well, I really don't have any other options. It's not like most of these are private, so public student loan forgiveness is not an option. It's like
Mm-hmm.
either I pay it or I pay it. And I
Right.
can either bite the bullet and do it as fast as I possibly can, or I can drag this out over 10 years and, waste tens of thousands of dollars in interest. So before I had ever even started working, like in the period of, you graduate, you're waiting on your license and all that stuff, I decided like, I'm just going to get this done. And my initial job was hospitalist, 7 on, 7 off. So I knew I would have a week off. And
Mm-hmm.
I had already decided, in those moments, I'm going to find other ways to increase my income on my off week so that I can make bigger payments that I could afford
Mm-hmm.
with just my primary income. So I was already thinking, like, how can I get PRN jobs? I had already talked to my primary employer, and they had said, there'll be some openings on your other week. We have moonlighting rates if you want to pick up shifts. So I was
Nice.
already thinking through all of that kind of before I ever started. And then deciding, what's a good amount of time to wait before I try to get a PRN because I'm a new grad, how
Mm-hmm.
long should I give myself to be comfortable? And then once I started working, I immediately was like, all right, here we go. I didn't even wait the grace period of 6 months, like very first paycheck went to the loans.
That's smart. I think a lot of people, myself included, we were like everybody's story, dirt poor during school.
Yeah.
I started PA school with no children. I graduated with two. So you
Wow.
had like these two. Yeah, yeah, smart. It was great planning. But, we had little kids. I mean, we had like a 2-year-old and a newborn basically. And we had one car that was just a piece of junk. And so the first check comes in, and the first check wasn't as much as I thought it was going to be. I don't know why,
Right.
but I was like, hold up, this is weird.
I
But
had
we
the same
did,
experience.
oh man, I was like, wait, I think I did the math wrong, so but we kind of got into the habit then of just kind of living up to what the paycheck was and not getting on top of debt and not saving and stuff. And that's a very easy thing to fall into. And once you fall into it, it's kind of really hard to break out of it. So the fact that you went right into it with your first check is very wise. So good job.
Thank you. Yeah. So I was married during PA school. So, we decided before, like, we bought a house in PA school and we're like, okay, whatever my husband can afford on just his salary, like without me working, that's the house that we're going to buy. Because and really that honestly wasn't an intentional plan for afterwards, but it worked out extremely well that the decisions we made while I was in PA school, like our main overhead expenses, he could cover on his income. So when I graduated, we just kept doing the same thing. Literally every single dollar that I made for the whole 16 months that I took to pay it off, we paid to the loans and we lived off of his income. And it wasn't even until the student loans were entirely paid off that we started living off of any of my income at all.
Wow, that's impressive. That's really cool. What was it like when when I think of, like, I'm going to put every penny towards paying off debt, I think of like, oh, it's going to be 10 years. It's going to be, it's going to be a long time.
Right.
16 months, I'm sure it was not short, but it's also not nearly as long as I would have expected it to be for that amount. So what did you do when you were done? Once everything's paid off?
So honestly, we did a lot of things because we put a lot of things on hold. Like I drove my little $4,000 Chevy Cobalt that I had still from undergrad. I drove that like the whole time we were paying off the loans. My husband didn't upgrade his car. We hadn't really traveled. So as soon as we were done, we actually, saved up. We did pay cash to upgrade both of our vehicles. And then we started traveling. So that was kind of our big reward. Like, I can't tell you how many times I spent night shifts working at these kind of small hospitals, not much going on, but I'm like, I need the money. So I'll go, sit in your call room all night. And I would just be on Pinterest, like, okay, where do we want to go on vacation when we're done? Because that was my little carrot at the end of my road of this is going to be worth it all in the end. So
yeah, that's a good motivator.
Yeah.
To sit there and dream of what you're going to do. So can we talk about moonlighting a little bit? Because you touched on something that's, I think, really important for our listeners is how soon after your first job was cardiology, is that right?
So actually it was hospitalist medicine.
Oh, okay. Did you work, you did hospitalist medicine, then cardiology, now pulmonary critical care?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I took a job out of school as a hospitalist, working for a group that had a contract with the hospital. And then after about 6 months, the group that I worked for lost the contract with the hospital. So all of our jobs were sort of terminated by proxy. So that was kind of stressful. I'm a new grad and, just less than 6 months out, I'm finding out well, you're losing your job. So that's when I switched to cardiology. I was really fortunate that I had made some connections on my rotations and a position was open. So I got really lucky in that regard. But I started out very briefly, 6 months of doing hospitalist medicine.
Okay. So how long do you think it took before you were ready to take a PRN job and feel confident in doing that?
So I did it relatively quickly, probably within the first couple of months, but I took PRN positions doing things that I was already sort of doing. I think, that worked out for me because it was the same skill set. So most of my PRNs were other hospitalist positions or urgent care, because I felt like that was the thing I was most equipped for based on what I had learned at work and what I had learned in school. So, that worked out for me. I feel like if you want a, PRN position as a new grad, you can't go get a PRN position in ENT because you don't know ENT and they don't want to train a PRN person. They want you to be productive. So as a new grad, if you do take a PRN, I feel like it really needs to be primary care covering a weekend shift or urgent care or something that, your knowledge from school equips you well for, and it really cannot be anything subspecialized.
Right. And even some things, I think my first PRN job was in the ER, and I was working in general surgery, worked in the ER, and it was different enough that I mean, people would come in and I was like, ooh, I'm not sure how to handle this.
Right.
And we kind of had, I wouldn't encourage this because you want to be a fully productive member of the team, but we kind of had an agreement. They were pretty hard up for PRN employees. And so they said, if you'll if you'll come, like, you can do all the suturing, you can do all that stuff,
Okay.
we'll take the other stuff. And I was like, okay. I mean, it just worked out.
Yeah.
I would have never encouraged going into it with that, as your
Right.
goal. But the first shift or two, I was like, oh, I don't know that I'm cut out for this. So, so that's good. PA school is primary care focused. So
Right.
family practice, urgent care, like you said,
Right.
even a hospitalist is specialized enough that I don't think it's something that you could just pick up, 1 or 2 shifts a month. Like
Right.
it's got to be pretty in depth.
Right. Yeah, fortunately,
So,
I was already doing that as my primary job. So, the
yeah,
skill set transferred over to doing it somewhere else. But if I hadn't already been doing that, it probably would have been tough.
sure.
Inpatient medicine is its own beast, and it's not something that you really do a lot of in the actual PA program, or
Hmm.
depending on, where your school is, your rotation. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. You have to kind of work with the skill set that you have as a new grad and narrow your
Hmm.
focus when you're looking for PRNs.
Yeah. Now it sounds like your employer was okay with it. I mean, they kind of were the ones encouraging it. Just
Yeah.
we know that you're going to have 7 days off.
Mhm.
You should do something with that time. So any issues there, or were they're all for it?
No, they were all for it, especially all for me picking up within the group. Like the other week was short staffed, so they were very, grateful for anyone to pick up on the other week.
Oh,
And
yeah,
then their
sure.
policy was just, and it's been pretty consistent with other jobs I've had. It's like you can moonlight, we just have to approve it in writing and make sure that you're not moonlighting for a direct competitor. So
Right.
I just had to kind of submit a thing, and they were okay with me working other places.
Cool. Good. Well, so you picked up these extra shifts. 100% of your main job salary went to paying off your debt.
Yes.
The extra shift salary went to paying off the debt. You
Mhm.
literally lived on just your husband's income,
Yes.
right? And what sorts of advice do you have for people who can do that? I mean, obviously,
Mhm.
if you can do that, that's a great idea. But
Right.
let's say your spouse doesn't, your income isn't, their income isn't large enough to do that.
Sure.
What tips do you have for people that are, wanting to pay things down
Right.
as fast as they can?
To be honest, you have to be willing to make short-term sacrifices, which I know is not a fun answer, and it's not necessarily what anyone wants to hear.
That's not why I signed up to listen to this.
I know, but
No, but you're right. You're
you
absolutely
have,
right.
you have to be able to put some things on hold. I mean, realistically, it's just simple numbers. So you either have to be willing to decrease your expenses or increase your income, or do both, which is what I
Hmm.
did. And if you're gonna go get the new car right away, or buy the new house right away, or do the 2-week European vacation right away, it's not going to be possible really to make like tremendous progress just out of the gate.
Sure.
That's not to say that you can't double your payment and pay off your loans in half the time that you were planning on. But if you
Hmm.
want to pay them off in, 2 years, 3 years, you're going to have to make some pretty dramatic changes probably. Depending on what you have. If you have $30,000 in loans, then maybe not. But if you're like me, with nearly 200,000, then in the short term, you have to be willing to make some sacrifices, which,
Sure.
is worth it coming from someone who did. Like, I worked at least 80 to 100 hours a week, just nonstop the whole time. And, I was tired, but also like experience comes from exposure, and being in
Hmm.
the hospital all the time, actually, I felt like helped me learn quickly and network. And I felt like it made me a better PA ultimately. So,
Yeah.
I don't have any regrets about doing that. And now we've been able to make more financial progress really in 5 years than I ever even dreamed would have been possible. So for, in the initial short term, it was a lot of hard, but it was worth it.
Right. And kind of an unintended benefit of
Right.
now you have all this other experience that helps you market yourself. If you wanted to switch jobs, you have a wealth of experience compared
Right.
to someone who's just doing, whatever their minimum hours are.
Right. Yeah,
So,
and it's networking too. Like I worked for multiple hospital systems, and ultimately between all the PRNs and my full-time positions, I've never formally applied for a job. Like I've just been
oh,
able to know
hmm,
people and network, and then when something came up, I was lucky enough to know about it before it was posted and things like that. So it makes a big difference when you're out there and people get a chance to know you. So there
hmm,
definitely were unintended good consequences that came from working all those extra jobs.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. Some of the best jobs aren't advertised. It's
Right.
usually people that you know or that you've come across. Um, that's a really great point. So I'm going to make sure to put that in the notes with a big, like bold and highlighted. So
Networking helps. Yeah.
yeah, okay. So my ADD brain is getting the best of me. I want to talk about two things. One, what tips do you have for people in school that they can do now, or like new grads? And then you mentioned something that I'm curious if there's more to it. You said you've made more financial progress in 5 years than you ever thought was possible. So does that mean that you paid off your loans and that wasn't the end point? Like you were able to get into a better position maybe in the future? So those are two completely separate questions, but I
Yes.
want to hear what you have to say about either one of them.
Sure. So I'll do the first one first. I'm a firm believer that while you're in school, you should be doing like a legitimate budget as though you have an income. Because even though you don't have an income, like earned money, you're living
Mm-hmm.
off of your student loans or you're living off of something. And ideally, like that something needs to last you, X amount of time. So you need to only be spending X amount of it each month. So,
Mm-hmm.
I think getting in the habit of being like, here's my budget, here's my income, AKA how much student loan money I'm going to spend this month, and
Mm-hmm.
actually keeping track of your expenses and knowing what's going on is just a fundamental habit that when you graduate and you do have an earned income that's not your student loans, you're already sort of in this program of like, I know where my money goes. And so you have the
Yeah.
potential to immediately make progress versus someone
Okay.
who's just like I was, honestly, you finish, you're not in the habit of tracking your money. You're not in the habit of budgeting. You're like, well, I have to make this really big payment. I hope I can afford it.
Right.
So
Right.
just honestly getting in the habit while you're in school, I think really sets you on the path when you're done.
Yeah. Yeah. Make it a habit, like a habitual thing that
Yes.
every month this is what we've got.
Yes.
And then when the numbers are bigger, great,
Right.
but you're still able to put things in savings or pay off debt or whatnot. So
Right.
okay. All right. So start the habits early. I like it.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Cool.
So question 2 then. So I've only been in practice for a little over 4 years. And so yes, the student loans were not the end of it. So since then, that was the first kind of 16 months. And then I mentioned we did the cars and did some traveling, but we've actually completely paid off our house. So that was
What? Hold
yeah.
on. Yeah, I hope my wife can't hear this right now, or she's going to be like, "What are you doing?" Whoa, good job. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. All right, so you paid off your house now. So
Yeah.
you didn't celebrate, "Hey, the loans are paid, now we're going to live it up." You said, "Nope, we're staying on this path and we're going to keep paying."
So we lived it up some, but when we were already in the habit of just being organized and kind of keeping our expenses under control. So we lived it up kind of in terms of travel because that's our thing that we like to do. But
Okay.
we kept our cars paid for. It's not like we have some like outlandish lifestyle. So as our income slowly increased, we kind of stayed on track, and then we started initially automating kind of higher payments. A couple of years ago, I think we automated quadruple our initial mortgage payment. And then this spring, I work in pulmonary critical care and there's a global pandemic. So I was fortunate enough not to be furloughed, which was incredible, but we were also extremely busy, working in an ICU. So I worked a ton extra this spring. And then we sort of realized we were close enough to paying off the house that if we just took all that extra money from those shifts, we could actually finish paying it off. So we just paid it off in August.
Oh my goodness, that is so cool. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
I don't know. I mean, I'm old. I've been a PA for a while now, and I don't know what it would be like to not have a house payment and a student loan payment. I've just it's what you did,
Yeah.
I never even thought about it. But
Yeah.
here you are. How many years have you practiced? 4.5?
Yeah.
And your loans and your house are paid off.
Mm-hmm.
People listening to this, listen to this. This is cool. Oh my goodness.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
it's
Wow.
really nice now. Like we both work full time. We have almost no bills because we just really have our utilities and our taxes and insurance. So we invest now like well over 50% of our income. And we still feel like, it's not like we're living on this super tight budget because we don't have bills. So we still, go out to eat and travel and do fun things. But we've committed to a minimum sort of percentage of our income that we just are going to invest each month. And it's 50%. So we're usually somewhere between like 50 and 57. And by doing that, I think realistically we'll be on track if we will want to retire in our mid 40s, maybe late 40s.
I'm out of here. I quit. Holy cow. You are doing this right. Where were you 15 years ago when you're like, I was very young then.
I know. Yeah.
So, don't tell me because that's going to make me feel really old. My oldest just started driving. So if that puts things in perspective. So, yeah. Wow. Okay. So you just I'm completely blown away by the fact that you could retire in your 40s. That's really cool. Can you tell me you don't have to talk, amounts or anything, but what sort of investing are you talking about? Are you talking about the stock market? Are you talking about real estate? Where can you put your money when you have extra?
Sure. So we, our initial kind of pre-house payoff, we use retirement accounts at work and then Roth IRAs outside of work. So, we each do that through our employer. We have Roth IRAs separately, and then we use a taxable brokerage account. I'm a Vanguard girl, so that's what we do, but plenty of people use Fidelity, other things. They're all great. And honestly, we pretty much exclusively invest in low-cost index funds, just because if you kind of get into the weeds and play the numbers, the fees actually like dramatically change your numbers in 20, 30 years by hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we kind of stick with the low-cost funds, and then every month we do our retirement account investing, and then we do what I call bridge investing or investing in taxable brokerage account that we can access before any particular age, which will allow us the flexibility to retire early if we want, before we would necessarily have access to retirement accounts.
Gotcha.
So that's our plan now. Actually, we have our next plan is real estate investing, and we're kind of trying to decide really the approach to that. As you may have gathered, I really love the idea of not having debt, and but most of the stuff, as far as if you look at like, reading books on real estate investing, which I think I'm probably on my 10th book, a lot of the benefit of it comes from utilizing what they call leverage, or using debt in order to kind of have a tenant pay off your mortgage and increase your rate of return that way. So we're kind of in the process of deciding what approach to take on the real estate investing, but that's probably the next move.
Yeah, for sure. Did you ever think when you were in school, or let's say when you added up that number and it was 161,000, did you ever think that in honestly less than 5 years you'd be sitting in a place debt free, no house payment, no car payment, no loan payment, and you're investing over 50% of your income? Did you have any idea that was coming?
No. Honestly, not only did I mean, if someone would have told me that, I really would have like cracked up laughing. I would have never believed that. And at the time, I didn't know anything about money. I didn't know anything about investing. So no, I mean, I didn't know that was possible to invest like 50% of your income. I don't know anyone else, outside personally who's done that. I have, all these sort of social media friends, these little online forums that people do, but like my parents didn't do that. My husband's parents didn't do that. That wasn't something that we like grew up experiencing, and it wasn't even in my realm of possibilities at all. So no, absolutely not.
Right. Yeah. You hear people that have done that, like online or something. I know one person that has either I think he donates 50% of his income and then he invests 25%. And I was like, well, that's fine if you make $10 million a year, like easy for you to say, but like you're one of us. I mean, you're a PA just like we are. Like that's, it's really cool to hear that a not a regular person, because you're pretty exceptional, but
I'm a regular person.
someone who is doing what everyone probably listening to this podcast is either doing or about to do can actually do it in a short amount of time. That's really cool. So way to go, man. That's incredible. Okay. So you've got some free time with your current job.
Yes.
And clearly you have a wealth of knowledge. So tell us about, I know you do some coaching and you've been helping people, right, do the same thing for themselves. Is that true?
Yeah, so I've been doing one-on-one coaching, which is basically just down. It's not like detailed invest in this fund or buy this insurance policy. It's literally like, let's go through all of your debts and where all your money is going and where you're wasting money. And, oh, well, you don't have XYZ insurance policy fraud terms. You should think about this and kind of navigate like, why does $1,000 of your income go to Whole Foods every month and and try to help
Because it's Whole
people
Foods, that's why.
Right. I mean, that's a real example.
Yeah.
Try to help people like really kind of make a plan and be like, okay, here's my, I'm organized. Here's what I'm doing. Here's my steps. Here's the anticipated timeline for each step so that I know like, okay, I'm making forward progress. So I've been doing that. And then COVID. So it's like, it's hard to meet with people. You can do virtual Zoom things, but I ultimately was like, okay, the world is virtual. I'm going to create an online course. That way people can do this at home, on their own time, at their own pace. And so I just launched that earlier in October.
Cool. All right. So the course, does it kind of guide similar to what you do in one-on-one coaching? Are there worksheets or do you would I fill out, this is how much I pay each month for this and this and this? And
so it's basically, it's video modules and it starts at the beginning. It's really intended for someone who has previously just not been focused on money at all and is like at the beginning of their journey. So it's video modules. There's downloadable, actually it's Excel sheets, which I find work well kind of in the money world. So downloadable Excel stuff. There's some kind of bonus guides to house buying, particularly if you're somebody with a big student loan burden buying a house. And there's some downloads about PRN jobs if you happen to be a PA or an NP or something similar. So there's some extras about that, but the main kind of bulk of the course is, okay, I'm at ground zero. How do I, set realistic financial goals and get organized and actually make traction so that I know like, oh, I want to do this. Okay, well, I can do it in 10 months or something like that.
Right. Yeah. So it's not, that way it's not, I can never do this. It's no, I can, but I just have to wait until then. Yeah. Right. Cool. Awesome. That, so I will post links and things, but tell us where people can find you for your coaching and the online course.
Yep. So I'm at www.strivewithkristin.com. I have a blog with a bunch of free information. I have an email that comes out on Mondays with sort of free tips and tricks. And then the coaching and the online course are on there as well.
Awesome. Cool. Can you tell us quick, let's pretend COVID isn't a thing. What's the one-on-one coaching look like? Like on a, if I were to sign up, what would that look like for me?
So it's a 3-month program. There is the initial sort of introductory get to know you call that's complimentary. Then it's 60 minutes of formal meeting once a month for the 3 months. And then sort of, email, text message conversations, phone conversations interspersed of like, this came up, we want to refinance our house. What do you think? So I'm available in between the meetings, but it's 3, formal 60-minute sit down meetings.
Gotcha. Cool. How do people, money is a weird thing because people get kind of nervous talking about it. So how have people responded to you? It's a big step to say, okay, I want help. Right. But then once people start talking about it, do they get awkward or has it been pretty easy?
The initial part can be a little bit awkward of just like, so the initial part's, where are you at and where do you want to go? So the where you are at can sometimes make people feel uncomfortable if they're not happy with it or proud of where they are in the moment. So that initial like, I sort of have $30,000 in credit card debt, that moment can be a little awkward. But after that, it really honestly isn't. But that was part of the reason why I opted for the course too, because that sort of gives someone the opportunity to learn without having to necessarily share information with anyone that they may be uncomfortable talking about.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I think it is awkward to talk about it at first, but then once you're making progress, nothing feels better. You know, we had some credit card debt when we moved and built it up, and I didn't want to think about it. I pretended it wasn't there, and of course that doesn't work because it's there. But as we figured out a plan very similar to what you said, which was moonlighting and working extra, and it was brutal, but it was like, you know, it was a year of, you know, 1 weekend a month, which isn't terrible. And by the end of the year, like the debt's completely gone, and it felt so good to just pay that part off. So the student loans in the house are still there, but
you can do it.
I would like to think so. So what, before we go, what sort of kind of last bit of advice do you have for listeners?
Sure. So if you're, you know, a soon-to-be graduate or a recent graduate, you're overwhelmed by your student loan burden and you feel like you're never going to be able to get out of the hole that you're in, I just want you to be encouraged that you can. People have done it. I've done it. And, you know, even though you may be in a season of feeling hopeless about it or really discouraged, try to move past that and focus on the actionable plan part. Awesome.
Yeah, I think getting the plan in place is probably the key, and then sticking to it from that point on. It makes you feel
better, honestly. Just to even know that you have an attack plan, that alone makes a big difference.
Well, good. Well, I will certainly, I will send anybody that is willing to come your way, because it seems like you've got it figured out, which is cool. I really appreciate you. Yeah, and everybody that's listening, if you will head to strivewithkristin.com, and links are in the show notes, so definitely check those out. But cool. Well, thank you so much for your time. Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate you doing this with me.